So we're interviewing Michael Newhard, the mayor of the village of Warwick. And so when did you, what year did you first become mayor?
2001.
And what were you doing right before that?
Well, I was on the board before that. I was on the mayor on the board 2 years prior to that as a trustee. My father was on the board, and he passed away, and his seat was open, and I raised my hand and thought it would be a wonderful thing to finish his term, and it's an appointment at that point. And so they did appoint me, and once I got on the board, I thought, what am I doing here? But then quickly recognized, wow, what an impact you can have on your community to participate like this. And so that was the beginning.
And so what were you doing with your life before that?
Yes. Well, I own a store on Main Street, and so my sisters are my partners in that store, and we've been running that for almost 40 years. So that's what I was doing. I'm also an artist. I'm a painter, and so I do that all the time in my life.
You're still doing that?
I am, yeah.
Okay. And so what ideas did you, while you were on the board, were there things you were thinking about that you wanted to do if you became mayor? What was what was the impetus to become mayor?
Well, there were a number of things that happened. The mayor that appointed me is someone I knew because I had actually been on the Architectural Review Board and the Shade Tree Commission. So I was somewhat involved as a volunteer in appointed positions. And so just having that knowledge was great. And then also watching my father and what he did. And I was given the responsibility of Parks and Recreation as a liaison. And so that was wonderful. And that's what my father had done as well. So there was a lot of activity going on. There was a group of young skateboarders that wanted desperately to create a skate park. And my father initiated that with them. And I took it over the finish line. So that was a great thing. One of the first skate parks in the Hudson Valley. And so we're quite proud of that. And now we're about to build a new one. So that's very exciting, too.
So is the old one still there?
The old one is still there. 20 years and functioning, but is pretty worn out, And the new skate park will be really state-of-the-art, concrete, beautifully designed by a world-class skate park designer, and we received the funding for that from a grant, the Kasuga Foundation, and so that was really exciting because that made it a reality.
Okay, so what were you? Did you have? What was Warwick like when you? At that time, how was it different from how it is now?
Yeah, I was much quieter, and but there was an active downtown. It was. It always seemed to continue its energy and vibrancy, even though malls were built, and it was before internet, really. But there was because I was a store owner, I was very involved with the Chamber of Commerce, and there was a strong chamber, which I think helped everything along in terms of the vibrancy of the village, and then a strong historical society too, and I participated in that, and that again was something that really, I think it really glued people together. That pride in place, and action and activity and connection to the community.
So did you have any big visions of what you thought could happen that you wanted to move forward?
I had some glimmers, more so that. And I also recognized that to do a vision or to have a vision, it's not your vision, it's the vision of the community. And when I was trustee, I spearheaded a study called the Central Place Strategy, in which it was dealing with how important this village was for the entire town and how this village should grow and how the town should respect that growth. And so that relationship just the key components of that. And it was just at the point where we were about to lose our food store, the Grand Union. And so that was a major blow in losing that. And there were wheels in motion, and I think everyone really felt the loss there. But going back to what we did this strategy, Central Place Strategy, and part of that was community visioning. Mm-hmm. And we organized a wonderful event which brought a lot of people together and gave them some voice. And that's something that has stayed with me and something that I have continually done throughout my tenure as mayor, because I feel that's so important to find those voices, especially when you recognize if you put up a posting, we're having a meeting, we want to talk about the future, and the same group of people come, because some people, have two jobs and can't make it, or they have kids and they can't come out, and or they didn't understand the posting because it was not in their language. So all those things made me very keenly aware that to get community response, it's not by sitting back and waiting for people to come. Quite often, you have to go to them and talk and listen. And we do something now called listening sessions, in which we try to gather groups of people, such as merchants or restaurateurs, and just hear it out and hear what they have to say. And that helps us shape what our decisions are in the community.
Have you been surprised sometimes about what comes out of those meetings?
Yes, I guess I am, because, and they're mostly great things, and they're thoughtful things. And that's what is always wonderful and exciting.
Do you remember any in particular that were surprising? Some surprising suggestion or insight?
Not one in particular, but the one thing that comes to my mind, and when I go to schools, I tell the children this. I received a letter, was written to me about from two young girls who were in Stanley Deming Park, one of our major playgrounds, and someone was smoking, and so they thought that was really bad, and so they wrote me a letter, wonderful letter, to say that they felt that there should be no smoking in any of our parks. It was bad for your health and it's bad for the environment, the whole shebang. And I brought it to the board, and the board responded with making that a local law, no smoking in any of our parks.
When was that?
That was probably about maybe 7 years ago. So.
Pretty recent.
Yeah.
Any other interesting things come out of those?
Those listening sessions?
Yeah.
I think what really comes out are not always the individual ideas, but the sense that you are being listened to, and the sense that you're being respected, and that you have a say, that your opinions have merit, and it's not just your opinions, but it's your opinions in response or in connection with other people's. So we had a comprehensive master plan for memorial park. And it was almost a year and a half long workshop of a committee of stakeholders. And there was about 20 people on that committee. And one of the issues that we had to deal with was moving the skate park. And we had a lot of pushback from certain neighbors. And so we made sure that somebody from that neighborhood was on the committee. And that was a really important thing, because as a group, we were able to make that representative understand that this park was for everyone. And it's a democratic place, and it's an active place, and the importance of the skate park, and that it was not the end of the world, and that it would be a good thing. And I think when this representative saw the community response, how in favor they were, and the committee was, for this activity, for this to happen, he was able to bring that back to the neighborhood and explain and say, we have to look at this more deeply than just a knee-jerk reaction. There's more to it. And he was able to win them over. So that was great.
And so what have the strongest feelings erupted around? What topics?
Oh, many. Over time.
Uh-huh.
My first tenure, or my first years as mayor, the Grand Union had left, and we were really feeling very frustrated by that, losing a food store, a food resource.
Why did they leave?
They went bankrupt. And at the time, the only food resource was ShopRite, and that's quite 2 miles outside the village. And it essentially created a food desert in our village. You could get snacks at Sunoco, but that was it. And at that time, the farmers market had just begun. So it wasn't a food desert when that was here, but it was seasonal. So it became a very big issue, a focal point of the community and of the board. And we tried to attract a food store, and we did, to actually share the space with CVS.
What have the strongest reactions been? Right,
okay. And there have been many reactions over time for different things, many different things. Mm-hmm. My first term as mayor, the Grand Union went bankrupt or went out of business. Mm-hmm. And so we lost a food store. And the community itself was really frustrated by that, losing our major food resource downtown. And the board and I worked to find another food store that would potentially move into that spot. And at that time, also CVS had just signed a lease. Mm-hmm. But we started talking with CVS and had asked them if they would either share the space or if they could build on to make a larger store so that there could be a food store and a CVS together. And that went along quite well for a time. But then CVS decided, well, we really don't need this food store, and pulled out of the negotiation, so to speak.
So they never had the food there?
No,
okay.
They never did. And the food store we were looking at was this wonderful kind of boutique food store out of Ulster County, and just really fit the bill for our community, and was very eager to move here, actually. But then CVS pulled out, and we decided to use the heavy hammer of government and go towards eminent domain of the site, and not to throw CVS out, but to take hold of the site and then to do what we wanted to do, which would be share this building with CVS and a food store. And then that became very, very intense. And I was at the point where it was a 2-year term, and my term was up, and I was running for re-election. When I first ran as mayor, and when I won by a landslide. My second term, or my second election, I won by 35 votes. So wow. It was pretty intense. It was a big learning curve, baptism by fire.
What were people mad about?
Well, they wanted a food store, but they didn't want eminent domain. They were, they felt that was risky. And I realized that I had maybe 60% when I needed 80 or 90% of people on my side. And so that was a big learning curve for me. I also, by that, had a whole new board, or at least 2 members of the board, and they ran in opposition of the whole CVS food or the food store issue, and so they were on the board, and so it couldn't move forward, and that was disappointing because we did lose that store, and I felt like we could have made a good compromise, but so you move on.
So what did you learn from that?
I learned that, when it's not just the idea, or you think it's a great idea, you really have to bring everyone along with you. Mm-hmm. And if they're not coming along with you, then you have to look at that squarely and say, okay, maybe this is not going to work at this time. And that was a great, I think, political lesson to learn at a young age, at an early part of my political career. And I'll never forget it. That's for sure. It was on the cover of the New York, on the front of the New York Times.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So it did make a little noise.
So what put it on the front of the New York Times?
That it was an unusual stance, the eminent domain issue.
To have a food store.
Yeah, it was like David and Goliath kind of scenario.
So what? In retrospect, what would you have done?
I don't know if I would have done anything different. I really did feel strong about it, but I do realize, why it did not happen. And what's interesting now is that we received a grant to do a feasibility study to create a walkway from the village line out to Price Chopper and ShopRite, so that the workers and walkers and bicyclists could actually connect to those food resources. So and then the other thing is we're looking at trying to find a home for a winter farmers market somewhere in the village.
Any thoughts about where that might be?
Not absolutely. We have a few irons in the fire, but I can't really reveal them at this point because they're very at the ground level. So.
Interesting.